Have you ever looked at the United States debt clock, seen the numbers tick past $35 trillion and just thought to yourself, this has to be a scam, right? It's a feeling that's hard to shake. We're all taught from a young age that debt is bad, that you have to pay it back. If you have more debt than you make, you're broke. It's simple, common sense. So you look at the United States, a country with a debt far larger than its entire yearly economic output, and you ask a perfectly logical question. If I was this broke, would anyone in their right mind lend me money? The answer is of course no. They'd call you a terrible investment, yet the world continues to line up day after day to lend America trillions. They call it the safest investment on earth. Safest investment, or the most dangerous one. Today we're going to dive head first into this paradox. We're going to ask the uncomfortable questions and peel back the layers of what feels like the biggest financial contradiction of our time. This isn't just about numbers on a screen. This is about the very nature of money, power, and trust. And by the end, you'll understand why the simple rules of your own finance don't just bend, they completely shatter when it comes to the US public debt. So let's start with that number. Around $35 trillion in gross national debt. To service that debt, the government is now paying around $1 trillion a year. Just in interest, $1 trillion. That's more than the entire military budget. And the first question is always, who's getting that money? Is it all going to our rival like China? Well, not really. The biggest portion of that interest, the lion's share, is actually paid right back to Americans. It goes to the retirement accounts of millions of people through pension funds and 401ks. It goes to the US government's own trust funds, like Social Security and Medicare. And yes, a big chunk goes to the Federal Reserve, the US central bank. About 30% or so goes to foreign countries, with Japan, not China, usually being the top holder. So when you hear the argument, we can't just delete the debt, this is why. It's not some abstract number. Deleting the debt would mean deleting the retirement savings of your parents, your neighbors, and maybe even yourself. But that still doesn't solve the core problem, does it? It still feels like a shell game, a system that depends on every ever-increasing debt just to function. It's like we're all trapped in a train that's accelerating and the people in charge are telling us not to worry, because the crash will be very orderly. The whole feeling of a scam rests on that personal financing analogy we talked about. If I'm broke, you won't lend to me. And here is the single most important sentence for understanding this whole topic of US government is not like a person or a company. Why? Because you and I have to earn US dollars. The US government is the monopoly issuer of the US dollar. Through its central bank, the Federal Reserve, it can create the very thing it needs to pay its debt. Now you hear this and you immediately think, that's a scam. They just print money out of thin air. And you're not wrong. But there's a catch. The Federal Reserve by law sends all of its net profits right back to the US Treasury. So while the Treasury pays the Fed interest on the bonds it holds, the Fed takes that money, pay its operation cost, and sends the rest straight back to the Treasury. It's a bizarre circular flow of money. The real risk isn't a traditional bankruptcy, where the government runs out of dollars. The real risk is that in the process of creating all those dollars, the dollars themselves become worthless through hyperinflation. So if that's the risk, why is US debt still considered the safest assets on earth? The answer is what economists call the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry problem. The US dollar is the world reserve currency. The entire global economy runs on it. If you're an international corporation or another country's central bank, you have to keep your massive reserve somewhere. And you look around Add the alternatives, the euro, the yuan, the yen, and for all of America's deep and obvious problems, every other options look even riskier. So investors don't buy US debt because it's perfect. They buy it because it's the dominant player in a global system with no clear successor. It's safe because everyone collectively agrees it's safe for now. This tension between the stability of the system and the right of the individual has pushed government to extreme measures before. Let's go back to 1933. The Great Depression. The banks are failing, people are terrified, and they're doing the most rational thing imaginable, pulling their money out of the banks and hoarding physical gold. But what's rational for one person is a catastrophe when everyone does it. It's like everyone running for a single exit in a burning theater. The stamp ensures no one gets out. So what did President Franklin Roosevelt do? He became the fire marshal who blocked the main exit. He issued Executive Order 6102, making it illegal for private citizens to own gold. You were required to turn in your gold to the government, and what did you get in return? The very paper money you were trying to escape. This was a stunning act of hypocrisy, where, from the individual's point of view, you were punished for making a smart decision. But from the government perspective, they broke the rules to save the whole game from collapsing. Now, I've heard this compared to other drastic economic actions, specifically those in 1930 Nazi Germany. On the surface, you see two governments intervening heavily in the economy, but this is critical flawed comparison. The goal of the New Deal was to save the American democratic and capitalist system. The goal of the Nazi economy was to build a war machine for a war of conquest. The US financed its debt openly. The Nazis used deceptive, hidden debt schema with the full intention of paying for it all by plundering the nations they planned to invade. One was a doctor performing radical surgery to save a patient. The other was a killer preparing for a crime. The intent behind the action is everything. This brings us back to today. How does the story end? If the debt can't be deleted and it keeps growing, what's the final chapter? There are really only three possibilities. First scenario, the slow grind. This is the most likely path. Through a mix of moderate economic growth, steady inflation that slowly erodes the value of debt, and painful political adjustment, the debt is managed for decades. It never disappears, but it becomes a smaller piece of a bigger economy. Scenario 2. Financial repression. This is the Still's default. The government keeps interest rate below the rate of inflation, meaning the debt is slowly inflated away. It's a hidden tax on everyone who saves money, but it avoids a catastrophic crash. Scenario 3. The crisis. This is the hard landing. A sudden loss of confidence in the US dollar triggers a panic. Interest rates skyrocket. The US is forced into brutal austerity, and the world is plunged into a deep recession. This is the scenario where the safest investment is revealed to have been the most dangerous all along. The path we take will depend on the choices we make, the growth we can muster, and the trust the world continues to place in the US dollar. I don't think it's a scam in the sense of a hidden conspiracy. The rules are out in the open for anyone to see, but it is a system built on a series of paradoxes. It's a system that punishes individual saving for the sake of collective stability, a system where the safest asset in the debt of the world's biggest debtor. a system that relies on a collective belief that can feel at times like a leap of faith. The story of the public debt isn't over, and the final question we're all left with is this: can a game built on such contradictions truly be played forever?